When they talk about a wall of water, it is literally a wall of water.
First, when I woke up, I didn't believe it was that bad.
It is horrible in Texas.
There are as many as 4 rivers at risk of rising, cresting, and Governor Abbott says likely breaking records in Texas history.
News out of South Texas, where areas of the hill country are under a flash flood emergency. That's the highest possible level of warning. More than 20,000 people are being told to immediately head for higher ground as large and deadly flood waves have seen multiple rivers rise to what are described as perilous levels. The waters of the Guadalupe River rose more than 25 feet in just 1 hour earlier this morning. That's a danger for all creatures, not just humans.
This is already record-breaking in Texas, and the worst is yet to come. And we have tornadoes, we have record-shattering flooding, river levels never seen before, most likely, and never seen in decades. Texas is now being hit by a flood disaster that officials warn could absolutely shatter every record, and rivers are still rising. So this looks really terrifying, and it sounds terrifying what we hear in the news. In parts of the hill country and southwest Texas, so hill country that is basically north of San Antonio. I never would have thought that it could be that bad there. We have more than 20 inches, over half a meter of rain has fallen only in a few days. Isolated totals have approached 28 inches or 71 centimeters. For example, near Uvalde in Texas, as much as 8 inches fell in only 2 hours. Along the Guadalupe River at Center Point, the water climbed roughly 32 feet. That is almost 10 meters, guys, in just 4 hours. You have to imagine this.
This is incredible to see on a river gauge. 25 feet of rapidly rising water just in 1 hour's time.
This is a river in only 4 hours. Do you know how little evacuation time you have when that happens? As you see in the videos, homes have flooded, roads have been ripped apart. Listen to what they say here.
And crews have rescued dozens of people from rising waters. One family in Kerrville says they woke up at 2 a.m. to find water filling their home. They took shelter in the attic and say floodwaters were just a foot from the roof when rescuers reached them, thank God.
Entire communities have been cut off. Unfortunately, we already have confirmation that at least 2 people are lost, and emergency crews have already carried out approximately 250 rescues. But here comes the but. The most dangerous part may not be over, because the water that fell upstream is now becoming a series of flood waves moving towards communities farther downstream, and more rain is expected to come. This is no longer one isolated flash flood that we're dealing with here in Texas. This is a disaster. This is an unprecedented, most likely, disaster. It's a multi-day siege that we can say across a huge section of Texas.
Regarding the Guadalupe River, they are warning people to not become complacent, that it can give a false sense of security if they see the water levels going down, because they believe that a second crest may occur, specifically in Kerrville and into Hunt. This is, again, the southern hill country of Texas. So that's right along the Guadalupe River, right here. We've highlighted that flash flood emergency. It's that white polygon. To the north, though, I want to focus in on this area. This is the Pedernales River. And this is extremely important because now another wording, this is the 3rd time I've ever heard this from the National Weather Service, a deadly, large and deadly flood wave moving downstream across the Pedernales River, just below downstream from the Fredericksburg area. So that region is under major flood stage as it stands, or it's forecast to become, and it is likely going to rival some of the historic crests. This is just incredible to see what's happening here. This rapid rise downstream from Fredericksburg, that is that large, deadly wave of water that we're seeing materialize here on many of the streams. And
highest disaster declaration has been issued. Disaster declaration now covers 59 counties. At one point, all or parts of 14 counties were under flash flood warnings, while Uvalde, Knippa, and sections of the Guadalupe and Pedernales rivers were placed under the most severe alert, a flash flood emergency. So watch this. In Uvalde County, what they had to do to deal with this, officials had shut major highways and city streets as the floodwater was entering homes, and rescue boats moved through neighborhoods trying to get people out of their homes. Across Texas, at least 125 road sections were affected and 87 were closed. This is huge. This is really, really huge. State officials have deployed more than 2,300 responders. We see Black Hawk helicopters all the way around, other aircraft, swift water teams, and hundreds of vehicles. The scale becomes clearer when we look at the river gauges. So at Comfort, the Guadalupe River has reached 37.08 feet. That's 11.3 meters. That was 1.44 feet or 44 centimeters higher than during the deadly flood last year at the same location. So they haven't even recovered from last year, and now this is coming again. It did not yet break the all-time Comfort record of 42.3 feet that was set in 1869, but it's really getting close.
Yes, sir. There are reported issues with our water treatment plant, and also with our wastewater transportation, the pipelines transporting wastewater to our wastewater treatment plant. But that's not all. I mean, the bridges, too. We have a major bridge in the middle of town.
Now you can just see the debris there. A lot of this is bringing back memories from the 4th of July floods last year. I feel like we were all kind of holding our breaths as we got through that weekend. And we made it through, and then here we are again. A lot of the same footage. It looks similar to what we were watching last year with those rivers rising and rushing rapidly.
Major bridge in the middle of town, which was struck by a large search and recovery barge, and we're concerned about its viability as a bridge right now, so it's closed.
But it has definitely exceeded last year's mark in a community that has already seen what this river can do. And if we look upstream near Center Point, the river rose approximately 32 feet in 4 hours and has approached the catastrophic level that it has already reached last year. And if we look farther west, the Nueces River below Uvalde, I probably pronounced that wrong, sorry guys, was forecast to crest above 27 feet and potentially does exceed the record that it set in 1996. The Pedernales River crested near 34 feet upstream, and it's sending another major flood wave towards Johnson City.
And the governor tells us the state's bracing for more rain and that the hardest hit areas are not out of danger yet. 20 to 25 inches of rain over the last 3 days, causing rivers to swell, surge, and spill out of their banks. Uvalde County in a watery stranglehold, parts cut off, no way in or out. But not just Uvalde and Kerr counties. The Texas game wardens have been operating in at least 8 central Texas counties.
The Nueces River near Uvalde is 2 times the flow of Niagara Falls. At the Frio River, also near Uvalde, it'll be a top 5 crest, worse than 2007. At the Pedernales River, near Johnson City, a top 5 crest, more than 21.9 feet, worse than the 2019 event. At the Guadalupe River at Comfort, a top 3 crest behind the 1978 flood, higher than last year.
And now we're not sure just yet what all of that means come tomorrow. If all of that comes to pass tonight, what it will look like in that region. The governor says there'll be lots of rising water and rising rivers over the next 24 to 48 hours. Officials say they need people first to stay off the roads. That's the best way to save lives, but certainly going to be a long night in the hill country.
And they can expect a second wave. This is what they're telling us right now. So that means this record-breaking flood disaster is still developing and unfolding. Weird things can happen, right? We can see that rainfall can stop over one town while the river then still continues rising for hours somewhere else. So the atmosphere over Texas right now, it became an almost perfect machine for producing this extreme rain. And this is basically what we're seeing right now. It's a painfully slow moving circulation that is called a mesoscale convective vortex that is crawling across this region. We've seen the devastating flooding in China. I've made videos about this. This is equally as bad. This is a compact rotating disturbance that is created by thunderstorms, and instead of like quickly moving away, unfortunately, it remained close enough to keep generating these new storms. So at lower levels, what we're seeing, it's a steady jet of air that pulled tropical moisture north from the Gulf of America, and atmospheric moisture values exceeded 2 inches. So, which is extremely high. And thunderstorms then converted that moisture into rainfall rates of 2 to 4 inches per hour. That is 50 to 100 millimeters per hour, and in isolated locations even more. This is absolutely crazy.
When they talk about a wall of water, it is literally a wall of water.
First responders battling their way through black water to reach those trapped in the middle of the night. Rescuing Robert Shelton and his family from their flooded home in Kerrville.
Within a blink of an eye, it was already waist level, and then the door broke open and more water came rushing in.
He says they sheltered in the attic for more than 2 hours until rescuers could save them.
I was scared the house was going to break apart.
Daylight revealing the heart-sinking scope of yet another disaster here in Texas.
And also, what helped develop this or escalate this was a stationary weather boundary. It helped to keep the storm's focus basically over the same broad region, so they're getting everything. So what happened was new cells formed repeatedly again and again, and they moved across this already saturated land full of water, and it was weakened, and then everything's replaced by another round, right? And this was going on for days, and by the third day, the soil had virtually no storage left, couldn't take any more water. It's just full, right? So it kept raining. So additional rain immediately became runoff, was feeding creeks and rivers that were already overflowing, has added to the problem. And the Texas Hill Country, unfortunately, as beautiful as it is, I've been there many times. I went to high school nearby for quite a while. So I love this area. The situation is especially dangerous there right now. Much of the region, and you have to look at the geology, it's built from limestone covered by thin, shallow soil. So water cannot sink deeply into it fast enough. That's the problem. So steep slopes that we definitely do have there, they funnel the runoff water into these narrow creeks, and then those creeks, they empty quickly into rivers with the steep banks. So that makes it so fast and so terrifying. But we know Texas, don't mess with Texas, right? They're strong, they will recover from this. But right now, it's an absolute emergency. So from what I just described, the result can look less like a river slowly overflowing, like in other areas, for example. It looks more like, and one resident described this, like a moving wall of water. Normally, when we hear that, we think about tsunami or something like this, right? And think about the weight that this moving wall of water has. 1 cubic foot of water weighs approximately 62 pounds or 28 kilograms. So multiply that by a river that is tens of feet deep, that is filled with trees, fencing, pipes, pieces of buildings, and the force becomes almost impossible to resist. So dangerous, so dangerous.
First, when I woke up, I didn't believe it was that bad. I didn't. And there was tornado warnings and things like that because I'd never seen it that bad. But when we got out and walked around our neighborhood, I've never seen it that flooded before.
Even roads. You see a road and it looks like it's still intact. It can be hollowed out underneath before the surface suddenly collapses. You don't want to drive over that when that happens, right? So, and we have to say that this flood is also different from the catastrophe that happened there last year in 2025. So last year, an extraordinary burst of rain struck the upper Guadalupe basin near Hunt. So the river rose with a devastating speed, and unfortunately at least 135 people were lost across the region, including 27 campers and counselors. Maybe you remember that story. But this year's rain has spread across a much wider area and has continued for several days and still is. So in some places, the hourly rainfall was even lower than during the worst moments of 2025. But the total amount that we're dealing with is greater. So that creates a slower, broader disaster that we see. We have more saturated basins, more rivers rising simultaneously, and more downstream communities exposed. So nearly 1 trillion gallons of rain. I repeat it again, guys. 1 trillion gallon of rain fell across the 3 hardest hit counties in roughly 3 days. This is an insane amount. So the event became large enough to flood Guadalupe, Nueces, Frio, and Pedernales river systems, while also overwhelming the smaller creeks in the area, also drainage channels, low water crossings across the region. We can say that Texas was more prepared this time. We have rescue teams and aircraft were positioned before the worst rainfall arrived. So they did do preparations. They also had new warning sirens that were installed in parts of Kerr County after the 2025 disaster to give people a quick warning that it's coming. Also, these earlier warnings and evacuation orders appear to have prevented a repeat of last year's enormous human toll. But preparation, unfortunately, it could not prevent the rivers from entering homes, destroying roads and trapping drivers. This is the most dangerous thing. The people that were lost, it seems they were washed away with their cars. And what we can say right now, the crisis is moving to another phase. Several central Texas reservoirs, water reservoirs, have reached capacity, and it forces them to do, I don't even want to say that because it pains me so much, controlled releases through floodgates at dams that are forming Lake LBJ and Lake Marble Falls.
Rescues are already underway. Governor Greg Abbott says at least 2 people have died.
We're facing record-shattering rainfall that leads to very dangerous flooding. We want to do everything we possibly can to protect all lives.
So those releases are intended to manage the reservoirs, but unfortunately they also produce faster and higher water downstream along the Colorado River system. So people below the dams were warned that conditions could change rapidly, right? Fast. So in addition to all of that, Texas has also declared an agricultural emergency after reports of flooded crops, stranded cattle, drowned livestock, unfortunately, along the Pedernales River, the Chibolo Creek, and the Frio and the Nueces River. So even I think even after the current rescue operations end, farms, ranches, damaged bridges, and washed out roads will require a long recovery. And my hearts go out to everyone affected, and also to the farmers and ranchers who lost probably their livelihood, right? The immediate uncertainty is basically where then now the final storms will form. Where will it happen? The Weather Prediction Center maintained its highest category, a level 4 out of 4 risks for parts of south central Texas overnight. Forecast models are showing 50 to 70% chance of more than 5 additional inches north and east of Del Rio, with a disturbing, I have to say, disturbing 30 to 50% chance of more than 8 inches in some areas. The local forecast still allowed another 2 to 4 inches, with isolated pockets near 8 inches, before the main threat begins shifting west towards the Big Bend region. So on dry ground, that would be very, very dangerous as well. On ground that is already overwhelmed by more 20 inches of rain, nearly every drop becomes a runoff. So the next threshold is not simply another rainfall record, it's whether the Nueces River breaks its historic crest. So whether the Pedernales flood wave reaches Johnson City higher than expected, and whether we will see new thunderstorms form over the same affected areas before the existing water can escape. When the sky begins to clear, that is when we can see the final records that will be set. I will keep you updated about this, guys. And if you want to know what happened with the San Andreas Fault in California, this is really creepy, I have to say, because it slipped. It slipped. That means the fault moved. And I'm really talking about moving, strike, slip. So what does that mean for the big one? Because it did this hidden before our eyes, because it was not producing a major earthquake when it slipped. So that is really strange. Why and how and what that means, guys, you have to know. Check it out here. I see you in a second. This is highly interesting, I promise.